This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Except for Alfred Hitchcock, more has been written about Orson Welles than about any other U.S. filmmaker. This is perhaps not surprising, because the two men were, at least arguably, the most significant Hollywood directors of the 1940s, the peak decade of the classic studio era, and they have interesting things in common. The burning R at the end of Rebecca, and the burning rosebud at the end of Citizen Kane. The madmen at the family dinner tables in Shadow of a Doubt and The Stranger. The crazed clerks who rent motel rooms to Janet Leigh in Touch of Evil and Psycho. They also make fascinating contrasts with one another. Welles, the exhibitionist, versus Hitchcock, the voyeur. Welles, the Baroque stylist, versus Hitchcock, the lucid exponent of suspense. Welles, the critic of plutocracy, versus Hitchcock, the artist of anxiety. Welles, the Midwesterner who became unbankable in Hollywood, versus Hitchcock, the British expatriate who was one of Hollywood's most successful figures. The comparisons resurfaced in 2012 when the International Sight and Sound poll of filmmakers and critics announced that Citizen Kane, which for 60 years had been considered the best film ever made, had fallen to second place, just below Vertigo. But Welles was a man of more varied talents than Hitchcock, and because his career had so many aspects, the literature on him continues to grow, to the point where it may soon outdistance any of his possible competitors. He was not only an innovative director of theater, radio, film, and television, but also an actor, magician, painter, cartoonist, musician, costume designer, writer, journalist, educator, political activist, orator, and raconteur. He was chiefly responsible for War of the Worlds, the most socially significant radio broadcast of all time, and he created some of the most legendary radio dramas and theatrical productions of the U.S., British, and European history. One of the 20th century's leading exponents of Shakespeare, Welles gave us 3 remarkable Shakespeare films, each in a different style, and a fourth, a color version of The Merchant of Venice, that has yet to be restored and distributed. Because of his unusual education at the Todd School for Boys in Illinois, he became not only a famous bardolater, but also a lifelong pedagogue. In 1934, at age 19, he and his tutor, Roger Hill, collaborated on Everybody's Shakespeare, a series of abridged acting texts of Shakespeare's plays with suggestions for how high school students might stage them. And these charming, unpretentious classroom books still have educational value. In 1939, following the huge success of his modern dress anti-fascist Julius Caesar in New York, Welles supervised the Mercury Text Records, the first full-length recording of Shakespeare performances ever produced. With Roger Hill, he wrote an article about the recordings for the National Council of Teachers of English, and they were recommended as teaching aids in the first issue of College English. In 1947, when movies were beginning to be widely used in classrooms, Welles made ambitious plans for producing and directing 16mm educational films. But, unfortunately, his American career was nearing an end, and nothing came of the project.